Do you know what really ticks me off about things is discontinuity, i.e. things that don't go with the flow. So I was irritated, particularly when I was trying to listen to not one but two videos earlier, and got the obligatory circle on the screen, and the commentary was like 5 words and then pause, 5 words and pause. Very irritating. So I thought I'd share that. I need to vent it out. I'm going to put links in the description. It's to what Ken Wheeler has to say about current events and the Jolly Heretic. I can't remember his name. You're going to get very good, intelligent, rational, hyper-rational perceptions on what is happening. Need to consider the bigger picture to all of this. The complexity of how many loops, endless loops, time loops and stories are being played out. There's some key words being put about at the moment. Words are wonderful things in what they reveal. It doesn't matter what the origin of the words and writing actually is, but there is power in words. I can prove this by just looking at the external. Incidentally, I had to laugh. This extremely warm weather, the word extreme is one that's been put about a lot at the moment in media headlines. But the community seating area, the heavy duty clear plastic, it's been so hot that it's gone brittle and it's been shredded by the wind. It's an external reflection of the world would appear to be in tatters, in shreds. And I don't react to it. I just laugh at it because I can trust in an answer is going to come another way round that. There's pointless me putting more plastic sheeting up if it's going to become so brittle it just gets destroyed. That would be a wasted effort. But there's not much sign of rain here at the moment anyway. I digress from what I actually want to get to here. It's funny what comes into the mind in sort of preparation to this video, and I must warn you now, this is not going to be pleasant. This is going to feel very uncomfortable, but I've had to sit through it, so why can't you? But it's the pattern, you see. When you face your inner self, it is uncomfortable, that facing your shadow side. That's sort of really brought home at the moment. I'll explain as we go. So what came into the mind was this comedy series called Dad's Army, with the Home Guard, the character Captain Mannering. The way it's written is main wearing. And if you think about a carpet, if you think about a corridor, the walkway on an aircraft, the main part is going to be wearing from lots of traffic, lots of thoughts. And there's a particular episode, and there's another character in this called Pike. He's representing almost like the inner child, but he turns up in this Home Guard Army khaki uniform, but his mother's knitted him this red and blue scarf to keep him from getting a chest infection on the battlefield, as it were. It's there's a comic irony to all of this, And in this particular episode, there's a downed German aircraft, and the aircrew are now held prisoner by the Home Guard. And the German has a pencil and notebook and says, "What is your name?" to Pike. And Captain Mannering says, "Don't tell him, Pike." Follow the train of thought with this, because the answer really has been given by Uncle Albert. Now, the thing with anything, if you've got what you actually got is a bloom of the negative Piscean age. So, particularly in recent years with Scottish politics, salmon is a type of fish, and there's also a type of fish called a sturgeon. Think of that in the realms of politics. A red herring, you could say, a red flag, something very fishy. And Uncle Albert's letters of 1871, how accurate with what's playing out. And there's something I'd like to add. From observation, there's a huge difference between the United States and the United Kingdom. Something to do with what you can carry or can't carry in the respective nations. Hence, in the bigger one of the two, you have Ra, not Ra, but it's an association, and associated with a particular thing that is in multiple numbers in the USA amongst individuals that is not the case in the UK. Excuse me. Now, the events that are playing out at this time, I'm grateful for words and where they came from, because, like I say, they reveal intent. The catchphrase at the moment is extreme right-wing thugs. Extreme, well, think of a pendulum. There's such a thing as political swing. This isn't going to be pleasant. This is going to be a cold, hard fact, reality of what seems to be unfolding. But I'm not going to leave it at that. I am going to say there is a solution, there is an answer to this, and part of that is going to be very unpleasant as well. So both Ireland and the United Kingdom are islands. They're small enclosed land masses. So it's easier to actually implement something, particularly when one doesn't have something that a vast landmass that you could call the United States of America would be. To give you an idea, if it takes 13 hours driving at 80 miles an hour across Texas, that would surely give you an idea of the vast expanse of that landmass. But when you have a comparatively small landmass, i.e. an island like the British Isles, and you don't have this same thing that is in the United States, that for your safety, and talk about Big Brother is watching you in the UK. Just consider how many shopping centres there are. Of course, they've got security cameras for your protection, of course. Pretty much every light junction, every road intersection, and many more. And of course, on your devices as well. Two-way cameras. Talk about Big Brother is watching you. So, with that sort of infrastructure already put in place, consider what the next step will be with that. And I would say what you're about to see unfold is the big shuffle. What do I mean by that? In a previous video I have described, if you look at a map of Europe, say 1900, there's three distinct sections to it. You've got Western Europe, comprising of France, Spain, Great Britain, Belgium and the Netherlands, effectively. There's a few other small ones. Next you have what are called the Central Powers, which will be Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Italy. And then you have Eastern Europe. And you know from the way history is told, you've got the West, you've got the East, and then the sort of the coming together, shall we say, squeezing the central power. But what you're about to see unfold for the UK and Ireland becomes the new East after 1917. It's easier to contain in an island than to try and do this in, say, France, for example, or Belgium. Belgium's probably too small, it wouldn't have the same impact. Now, if we look back in history, there was a headline theme between a British Prime Minister and a President of the special relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States. The special relationship is the commonality of language. Now, what I'd like you to weigh up and observe, and you don't actually have to look at anything, just if you see headlines and things. If you're in the United States, how much focus and coverage are you getting on what is alleged to be happening in the United Kingdom and in Ireland? I mean, it's almost inconceivable, the idea of people with IRA or Republic of Ireland flags and the Red Hand of Ulster flag together. See the Jolly Heretic for the background to that. But the commonality of bringing together of what would seem to be two opposites. There's a theme of this. One is of crushing. The other is of coming together, of unity. We're in a realm of duality. There is two serpents, hence the twin caduceus in the Garden of Eden. Why don't you eat of the fruit? Surely you will not die, has a double meaning. What is your perception of what is life anyway? Is it from birth to death? Are you referring to that part as life? Now, what if it's we've moved into an age of iron where everything is far more restrictive and agonizingly slow and seems like an eternity. Incidentally, from 2046 to 2106, which is only 40 years because of what will happen, but the children roaming around lost for 40 years, that's going to be played out. That's a different type of child. But the story will play out. The story is playing out. A lot of this is perspective. Now, what most of you would refer to as an NPC. Imagine an NPC listening to a video like this. And I'm going to say heaven forbid, because I know I'm not trying to create that thought. Because that becomes then a lure of possibly a comment and of you're off your head, you're nuts, you're crazy, or something derogatory, and an invitation to then take part in that stage play. Not happening. But it would sound like a load of babble. What is he talking about? See, metaphorically, like I said before, you have the pyramids in the structure of corporations. You also have the Tower of Babel. It's never stopped being built. It's being built in the way things are going to unfold. Politically, what was the East in the early 1900s, or not the first few years, but in the earlier part of the 20th century? The New East becomes the British Isles and Ireland. That will then be focused towards the USA to create the exact opposite in this pendulum swing. Because of things about the infrastructure, you could not implant so many cameras. It would be very difficult to do in somewhere the size of the United States, but comparatively easier to do, and if it's done over a long enough time period. I mean, what can I point to in the terms of time period? Just look at the 1881 census for England, Wales. Pick a small settlement, look at the census and look at the occupations. You'll have multiple skills and things that have been almost lost. See, I don't like inconsistencies, so it's not just the twirling. If I'm to believe the story of young boys being sent up chimneys to sweep out the soot, it's like, well, you're that short of people and labour, which is in stark contrast to why am I looking at buildings with aesthetically pleasing details that seem to serve no functional purpose to them, apart from they just look nice and look pretty and look balanced, compared to what is built now. Okay, I appreciate there are some people who like the excitement of the new, but personal opinion, it's not aesthetically pleasing to look at an office block that is effectively a cube compared to what will be classed as a Victorian structure. So you'll see this sort of stripping away of the artistic to the cold hard facts, the sort of cementing the gravity of the iron of the irony of this reality. Because this is what it all is, ultimately. It is an irony. You'll see a theme at the moment, particularly around gold, silver and bronze, but iron, it certainly can't imitate silver, and it definitely can't imitate gold, but rusty iron may look a little bit similar to bronze, so it will try and imitate. Effectively, this reality, it's mirrors and things, so that is being expressed externally and is unfolding, but like I say, the irons are not fully in the fire yet. There's been a theme of global warming. There is a truth behind that, but not in the way most people think. Not in the way science will tell you either. But things are going to get hot. I was shown... Oh, the emotions are coming up. I was shown... how can I liken this? The picture that flashed into my mind was in the film Terminator 2, I think it is. And the Terminator is now liquid metal, and at the end of the film, he ends up falling into the sort of molten metal, and it cannot take form, it cannot take shape. It is trying to replicate things it knows. It can't get a grasp on this reality. That's what's being shown in that film. That sort of moment of grasping, trying, its life force basically, trying to... It's going to be a suspended animation. That's the irony of going into an iron age, which comes really with 2046. That's when the tribulation, if you want to call it that, starts. The very word tribulation implies tribute. Well, often tributes are forged sculptures in gold or maybe silver. So iron. There's the irony that's coming out of this reality. And unfortunately, there are a lot that are going to experience this because they've already become like iron, become too rigid inside themselves and just can't see. But unless they've done sufficient inner work, they're going to be a liability anyway, to be honest. They're going to hold you back. They're going to stop you realizing your potential. See, whatever form or thing that comes, whatever becomes apparent, it's got a mentality like a younger sibling with an inferiority complex, or the roles can actually be switched. It could be the younger sibling is getting all the attention, which builds up the resentment in the older one. You only have to look at various mythologies, Enki and Enlil, Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, the sort of unfairness of one impersonating the other and seems to get away with it. And this just keeps playing out over and over again. It's like an infinity loop. And like I say, building the Tower of Babel. Well, the media is building a Tower of Babel. It means confusion. The other thing to consider with this, if we go back to the late 1960s, early 70s, technology and machines would make your life easier. It would free up and give you more leisure time. Well, I would suggest that's a half-truth, because if you're unemployed, how much leisure time do you have? But is it any advantage to you in quality of life, for example? This whole movement of man to machine goes back a long, long way, making your life easier for you, taking the easy route. I was shown the future for many, and it is like that Terminator. It's a soup, effectively. It's not going to be pleasant. For those that experience that, time is going to go agonizingly slow, and I do mean agonizingly slow in the most unpleasant ways that I don't want you to even imagine. Not nice. I've had to sit with this before making this video, but there's so much more. Yes, solutions. The external world is a reflection. So whatever is trying to come in, which I feel is trying to come in because it's also discovered a way of getting back out. They don't want to come in and get stuck in here fully. But the very nature of this thing is not like nature. It can't replicate in any way apart from through ending life. But it's not stupid. It's not going to extinguish its food source either. It will make it last. It's the ultimate expert in recycling. Ultimately, it is evil genius. But the thing is, everything's an external reflection. There's a bit of us in all of us, whether you like it or not. You just got to acknowledge it. So the whole irritation over the inconsistency and the stop-start with videos, it's like, this is really peeing me off. But I'm not going to suppress that feeling. Rather, I'll transmute it and I'll put it into a video. And I'll share some observations of things. Yeah, okay, it's going to look unpleasant. But how many things do you look at? And how many of them do you actually really see? Because it's funny, with if I see the media reports, just the headlines that come up on YouTube, for example, because I don't look at anything like this. I don't feel I need to. Because the key words give it all away, but we'll come back to that in a moment. So, thug, it's appealing to the most animalistic. The media portrayals of events are appealing to the most superficial and surface level differences, shall we say. There's a replay of the slaughter of the innocents about to take place. But you don't have to take part in any of it. How do you do that? You come to that self-realization. It's not about being selfish. See, when there's a fishy story, there is a line, and it's got a hook on the end of it. I'd suggest it has 9. It's more like a cat of 9 tails. It will try and hook you in any way it can. So pick a side and go along with a story. So you may see some really unpleasant things. They're sickening to see. But you know the ultimate thing about all of this, when this all comes to an end, you know what the question is going to be? You'll effectively be saying to, maybe it's your older brother or your younger brother, do you want to play again? Maybe you'll play the role of the villain next time round. Maybe you'll take the thug. I mean, look at the word thug. If the T represents the I at the highest level, which forms the letter T in its capital form, that leaves hug. So are you embracing the immortal soul inside yourself? Because that is the only thing that is going to pull you through this. Nobody can do it for you. We can all help and guide each other, but you have to feel it and recognize it and acknowledge it, recognize inside yourself. The external is just a mirrored reflection that is, in its own weird, perverted way, is actually guiding. But the game is the ultimate challenge. But the wing, the extreme right wing. Think of mirror. Think about the left and right hemispheres of the brain. It's inviting you to find the middle path. The stories are always with a focus. It's all about seeing. It's all about having perception. So it is possible to build a Tower of Babel that is actually clear to those that are meant to hear it, obviously. But consider, we're in a realm of duality. There is something that's working on a different polarity that is going to try and bring down, and will bring down, a very different cornerstone, a chief cornerstone. How are you going to cope with that? How are you going to fare against this? I would suggest that this is where you now face that internal version of it inside yourself. Because it is going to look grim. It's by design, it's meant to. Because it's showing you an extreme contrast. From seeing that, hopefully comes the recognition of its opposite. So it doesn't have to be that way at all. It doesn't have to be either way. There's a middle path to take through it. It's about seeing this through to the end no matter what. And just appreciating the irony, the humour, like with this you can't see it, but when I'm looking out the door, the plastic sheeting and how it's been sort of dried out and it's crumpled, it's gone brittle because it's become too rigid. It couldn't take the heat. Even in that is a message. It's just whether we can see it and whether we can decode it. There's no point me saying, oh, with all that's going on, get out the UK, that would sort of create an exodus. That would start a story, even if that was even possible. But I can guarantee you, even if things started to go that way, there would be a system reaction that would anticipate that. It works on probabilities. It's looking... But ultimately, if you wanted to put this in Gnostic terms, outside of all of this is the pleroma, and in here is something playing the Roma. But it is not what it pretends to be. But I'm considering and communicating with Junus on this, which is where, yeah, maybe it's part of my imagination, maybe it's part of my higher self, it's all the same thing anyway. But beyond the pleroma, what I call the hyperether, that's the Junus. Whether Junus also has the ability to come in and go out, I'm sure there is a window of opportunity, but it won't be 98 or 7. But when one door opens, another one closes, but it looks like there's 2 doors that are opening. But just be very careful and be very discerning. Really consider the words, the power of the words. Like, let's go back to Uncle Albert and his letter of 1871. Words committed to paper. It's almost like a spell that's now becoming into this reality. But are you a co-creator? Have you found the way to edit, to overwrite from the perspective of how it affects you? The saviour that you are looking for is sitting right inside you. Whether you recognise it, that's down to you. I would suggest that you start doing what is called inner work, facing your shadow side, sitting in the uncomfortable moments. Because being shown all this isn't pleasant. It's horrible to sit through. But it's contained, and it was shown as a picture. I can now visualize rubbing out that picture, because I'm not taking any part in creating that. I do not consent to take part in that reality. When there's a better one, which is getting to the end of the game, it's up to you what you do. I'm just giving you a perspective, but just based on observation of things, observation of words. It's quite clear that whatever gave us the words didn't realise it revealed something about what they're really saying, which is a huge key to which is leading to game over. But of course, we'll have to let this thing run. Everything in this realm is subject to time. It's in a time loop. That part has to play out. But the outcome of it is leading to what always was going to be anyway. There's no point fighting it. It's better to go with the flow and have continuity than interruptions and only getting 5 words out. But also realization that that's by design to trigger a reaction. What would be the point of me shouting at the device? Yeah, there are times when I do vent it out and say, oh, come on, at the screen, but I know that it isn't going to make a blind bit of difference, no matter how much intent I put behind that. Far better to go and make a cup of tea or coffee or something, or go and have a glass of water, and then just, oh, it is what it is, come back to it, and it will come right in its own time. But it's not going to affect my time, because I have the flexibility. I've not become so rigid, so ironed out in the irony of this reality, the Iron Age. The iron's not fully in the fire, and it certainly hasn't had the hammer blows from the blacksmith yet. That is yet to come. But what comes out of it is a fully crafted masterpiece, the basics of which will be given to the whitesmith to do the fine decoration, the embellishments that adorn it. Multiple stories are being played out in this reality. It depends on which story you want to take part in. Right, I think that's got this off my chest. There was, oh yes, fly fishing, talking of fishing, Phish, fishing, we're talking here, with this fishing line. There was a big thing, an advert campaign for Yellow Pages, directory of businesses and things. And he wanted to find a book he'd written, and the author was called J.R. Hartley. J.R. Hartley. There's a huge clue in that. I'm not going to even spell that one out, because I feel he can work that out. But through that Yellow Pages, consider the chakra. It's to do with gut feeling. It's a return of something he created. He smiles that, oh, you do have one in stock. He's so pleased. That's a pretty good outcome to aim for, if you can decode and put together all these little things that for some reason stick in the mind. Why do they stick in the mind, or why do they come back into the mind, and why at that particular time? Why Dead's Army? And don't tell them, Pike. And dear old Uncle Albert and his letters of 1871, giving you 3 stages. So that would be the gold, the silver and the bronze, which will lead to the irons in the fire. But consider also what rises out of the fire. Shall we keep this going for another 30 seconds to get a video of one video of 38 minutes? Is that prophetic? Is it just coincidence? I leave that for you to decide. But I have the free will, you see. I can call game over, because the perception that I will have, we do the opposite with time. It won't slow it right down and restrict it. It will open the floodgates. Let's get the flow really going. Looks like we are up to 38. Unconditional love to you all.